everyone. Welcome back to Geek Out to Say. I'm your host, Vince Guzman, here with my lovely co-host, Colleen. And today we're talking about Geek 101.
I've been watching
and
too
Big
much
Red
of
King says hi. Hi, Big Red
Hi.
King. We also have Retro Crunch on as well.
So
if you haven't checked out his YouTube channel, check out his YouTube channel. Got a lot of cool stuff on there.
Retro Crunch.
Retro Crunch. So, yes. He loves, I love Big Red Ants. Actually, his icon is like avatar is a Big Red.
Oh, Big Red, like the drink. Big Red.
Yeah.
I thought you said Big Red Ants, like, you know.
Big Red King.
Ants, like killer ants, like ants come to get
Where'd
you.
you
like,
get King ants from King?
I don't know. I heard ants, and I was like, why does he like big red ants?
ants?
They bite you, and they hurt, and they're mean.
Ouch,
I don't get it.
They're fire ants.
I'm like, are you from South Texas? Because maybe your red ants are different than ours.
So audio sounds good, so we're good to go on that.
Yeah.
Let us know if we need to increase or anything.
Yeah, because
we had some trouble last week, and I don't know why that.
Because it's the curse of the technical difficulties. Like it
when
happens.
we have a guest on, yeah.
Yeah, it happens all the time. We'll be running smooth, doing great, bring somebody on, and then, yeah. Or we start building momentum, and we're like getting audience members, and then, I don't know. It's like some curse we have.
Well, even part of the intro didn't. Even part of the first part of the video.
For some reason, YouTube now has got this little bug that when we try to start streaming, I click on start streaming and it says, okay, is that okay? And it's like, yes.
Do it.
And then it just sits there for a while and then it either starts or what it has been doing is it comes back and you have to do it again.
What?
So what happened last week was I wasn't paying attention and I clicked on things and I went, oh, we're good, and we're going. I look and went, why does it say we're
It's
not
because
live?
Al was sitting right there.
It's Al's fault. He jinxed it.
He jinxed it.
So no guest this week. We don't always have a chance to get a guest. Sometimes, like, it's
Sometimes
the week of spring break, and so, yeah. You know, people were out of town and stuff. Yeah.
Syncing up, so that's usually an issue.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've asked a few people who actually want to be on the show, but then they have to put in for a request to be off from work, because I forget that people don't all work 9 to 5-er. So
Monday through Friday,
some people are working at night, and so they're trying to get back to us so they can come be on the show. And so,
so today we're talking about Geek 101. So we're going to talk about the origins of the word geek and what it means today, and the many different meanings it has today.
Yeah, because I don't know if people actually know this about the word geek, but long, long ago, the actual word geek meant a sideshow performer that bit the heads off of chickens. It came from like a Dutch word that meant like fool or foolish. And my dad was actually the one that told me about this, because when I was a teenager, you know, nobody liked me. I was a geek or whatever. And back in the 80s, the word geek still had a negative connotation. And he was like, so you bite the head off of chickens? And I was like, what are you talking about? You're a weird old man, right? But he showed me in the dictionary. And now if you look it up in the dictionary, you have to go back and ask before what it means now.
Yeah.
Because they've updated what it means. But it really used to mean a performer. And they were such a low-level performer that's why it came from that word. And like, who's foolish enough, right? But they didn't have actual talent. So they weren't an acrobat or anything like that.
They would just kind of do like disgusting things.
Right. They were kind of like Ozzy Osbourne. You know, you bite the head off a bat and like, you know, so Ozzy was a geek when he did that in his show.
Well, he didn't mean to do that.
Technically, it wasn't a real bat, it was a rubber bat.
No, it was supposed to be a rubber bat, and then somebody switched it out and threw a live one, and he was so, you know, he had a lot going on in the head at the time, and so he just bit it because it was supposed to be rubber, and that was supposed to be part of the act, and yeah. So, but he's gonna live on in infamy because of that. We will always all remember that.
He'll
and
also live on
the
for
Alamo thing.
Yeah, the Alamo
yeah,
thing.
but we won't talk about that.
Apparently, he's been forgiven for that.
He's forgiven. He's forgiven. You know. Forgive and forget sometimes. So it's interesting. What I don't know is when the transition happened, because then, like in the early 19th century, geek became someone who like basically meant they were so foolishly involved in the one thing that they liked, that they wouldn't like branch out into the rest of the world, because they wanted them to be, you know, very Renaissance and be into the theater and art and literature and everything. But then these people would be so focused on science or mathematics or history, they became geeks, and it became a term for like academics, an academia type of term. So it went like that for a long time. So you were like a history geek, or back then you were a geek for a specific subject.
Yeah. So interesting history, being a history. I'm a big history geek. I watch a lot of like History Channel and stuff like that. And we actually this week we went to LBJ State Park, and we actually checked out the live historical farm.
Yeah.
And it's actually a live working farm that they don't use like any modern technology to be able to do any of the farm work there. That's really manual labor.
And they had already like once a season they even butcher the cow and everything, and a hog, but they showed us the sausage that they had made. They had it hanging and drying. And they were showing us like how they made butter and how they separated the curds and the whey, like Little Miss Muffet. They sat on their tuffet, no, and how they used everything. So it was really interesting. We got to hear several
there was
of
like well, I forget what it's like. It was like dried curd, but it was really fine. It kind of looked like really big grated Parmesan cheese.
It kind of looked like queso fresco to me a
Yeah.
little bit, not quite as
Thick.
Yeah, because they had squeezed it and squeezed it and squeezed it to get the liquid out, because they use the liquid for other things. But they said that they eat that. So they had no refrigeration unit, which was interesting to us. So literally they made this fresh cheese, and they would squeeze it and get this like a crumbly, like a Parmesan thing.
Yeah.
And they could eat it. How many days did they say they could eat it?
5 days, up to 5 days.
5 days, but by the 5th day it smelled like feet.
Yeah,
really
but
stinky
by the fourth and fifth day, it was kind of like.
But they still don't throw it out. So then they go through another process with it, and they cooked it with some of the butter and some of the leftover whey, I think, was what they cooked it with, right?
And make some stinky cheese.
And they made some real stinky cheese, but it was like they would put it in kind of like not a very deep saucer. So it wasn't quite a brick, but it was kind of a form, because they would cook it, stir it, cook it, heat it, and then let it sit, and it becomes this form, and they would slice it. And then they said the people that originally lived there had 10 kids. 10 kids. And so they would send this cheese like in the lunches and stuff, some of the dried sausage and this cheese, and that cheese could last another like 3 days or something. But with 10 kids, it probably didn't last that long. But they used everything. They even used the eggshells.
Oh yeah, that was really cool. They were going through, and we went through a section within one of the houses, and we went into the kitchen, and they had a reenactor there, or a historical farm worker there, and she was telling us about how they would make breakfast, and they would get the eggs, and they would use every single part of it. Yeah, they would eat the eggs. Eggs are great, and a lot of protein in there. But then the shells they would use, they would actually put those in the oven, toast them down, and then crunch them up. They would actually add those to the chicken feed to add calcium to the chicken's diet.
Yeah. So we thought that was great.
So
they knew how to use everything.
Because they didn't have like somebody coming by picking up their trash every week.
Right.
So they had to be creative with what they did with the waste that they had.
Yeah, because you want
So
to
they could
reduce
not
that.
have waste is the thing, because there was
Well,
not
and the
a
nice
lot
thing
of
was
place
they
to
had
post
so many
waste.
animals too that they were able to recycle some of that through the animals as well. So they used a lot of that. But if you are a history geek and you like that, that's a nice place to go. It's free. So LBJ
That was an
made sure that
interesting
it's
thing.
free.
It's one of the few state parks that is free, and that was done because of Lyndon Baines Johnson, the president, and he wanted it to be free to all.
For everybody to come out, yeah.
It's free for that one. Now the national park is a different thing, which is the house.
So the national park is the area that he used as the White House here in Texas. So he held cabinet meetings and everything here in Texas. And in that part, that's actually owned nationally. It's not owned by the state. You can go into Air Force One for free and talk about tiny. That Air Force One from back then, super, super tiny, but still cool to look inside of it. And they have it glassed off, but you can still go up in there and look inside of it. And then they have a recreation of his boyhood home. Uh-oh.
It works.
It's working.
Yeah.
You could see a recreation of his boyhood home. And then for me, being an educator, seeing the schoolhouse, that was really meaningful for me to see the schoolhouse.
That was really interesting. And to actually see, and there's not a lot of light in there either. They just had 2 lanterns in there for lighting.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
and
what
the
they had the
windows,
entire
but
time.
even then, it's
But
still
it
kind of
wasn't.
dark
It was a schoolhouse, but it was just like a one room. You just had 4 walls, and then somebody. It was like all grades there.
Everybody was in there together, so the teacher had to kind of give everybody work based on where they were at.
So the kind of stuff you would see on like Little House on the Prairie and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, so it was nice to see that. So
and that was an actual one that schoolhouse that he went to, right? Mm-hmm. As a kid, and he was actually really big on education. He was actually a former teacher.
That's right, he was. Yeah, and so he passed numerous education bills that have gotten us to where we are now. That gives more people access to having an education, which makes the United States very unique, because we're one of the only places where everybody gets access to an education, regardless of intelligence or amount of money or anything. So, so if you like history, you're a history geek. That's something here, and you live in Texas. That's something here in Texas you can go for free. Mm-hmm. It's really nice. It's a really nice day trip. We packed a picnic and went out and had a nice little picnic. It was really great. I liked it.
For you history geeks out there, check it out.
And then if you wanted to, you could dress up in your period stuff, because there were actually people there that I'm thinking were Amish. Mm-hmm. They looked Amish because they were dressed and they were talking about, like, this is how we live. This is how we still live every day. But they had come to visit. I don't know that they were Amish because I think they had a car, but I don't know what they were. I didn't want to be nosy and butt in, but they were actually asking some of the people about their sunbonnets. And they were saying, well, I don't know, somebody made this for me because I'm just recreating this. I didn't sew the clothes. Somebody sewed it for me, because some of the ladies were like, oh, that sunbonnet's really big and it would be nice for us when we're working. So they wanted to get the pattern from the lady to have sunbonnets to actually use.
Because back in the day, they didn't have sunscreen. So that was something that they used to protect their face skin from the element.
And the girls had really great floppy ones, but she didn't know somebody had made it for her. So, but I don't think anybody would bat twice. And even if they do, I think one of the things about being geek, which is hard sometimes, but is just kind of owning it. Like, if it's what you love and it's what you really like and it's what really interests you, and if you want to dress in that period pieces, like I know a lot of people dress up as pinup girls. That's something in that historical time frame that they're really interested in, that time frame, and so
they'll
all
do
the time
cosplay like Wonder Woman as a pinup girl.
Mm-hmm. Well, no, some of them live their everyday lives, like dressing all the time.
Talking about what are you talking about, pinup girl?
Like I was saying, if they wanted to dress up and go to the farm in those period pieces, like let's say they love that kind of clothing and they just want to go dress up and go out there in their own period piece.
Oh, yeah.
And like take pictures and be out there and be part of the farm or whatever. And that reminded me that there are other historical time frames that people resonate with. Yeah. And they kind of live their lives. They had that show for a while on TLC or one of those where it was those people that they wanted to go back to the 50s. Mm-hmm. And so they had made their houses all retro. They had found all of these retro things, and they dressed, husband and wife, they both dressed just like from the 50s, and that was just how they wanted to live their lives. They were just very interested in that time period, and they wanted to be part of that time period.
Black and Silver Diamond brought up something really good. Yeah. My tip for Geek 101, don't be a jerk. And that's one thing that we really tried to teach as for us doing the show, is that don't be a jerk when you're trying. You should just really educate people rather than just like, oh, do you know this and this about this episode on this little section on the little emblem on his lapel? Well,
and they jump on you for any little thing that you say wrong, right? Mm-hmm. So it's any little thing that that you say incorrectly. I get very tired of it sometimes. Like, I know I'm not an uber geek like people want me to be, and I don't know every minuscule thing. And sometimes I mix things up in my head, and I'll say, like, this is DC when it's really Marvel, or this is Marvel when it's really DC, or like I said something about the...
And that upsets a lot of people.
But
that's
like,
a big one. That's a big one that upsets a lot of people. And then and at that point, you just got to say, oh, well, it really wasn't that. It's actually, they were actually a Marvel character.
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a nicer way to go about it.
Yeah.
People just want to be, like, on the attack when it comes to something that they like.
Or even about, like, costumes. Oh, such and such didn't have that on their costume, on their outfit, during this time to this time, or...
Well, like for our Jedi outfits, we would never be allowed to be part of a sanctioned Star Wars group with the Jedi outfits that we currently have, because they don't meet the standards for the Jedi outfits if you're like part of one of those groups. Like mine especially, because it's that snake skin.
Yours probably doesn't.
No, and I don't even think yours has the right, like, they measure it and everything. Like, it has to be the right measurements, and I don't know how to sew that well, so I sewed it the best I could. But so that kind of stuff aggravates me. Like, I made my Jedi outfit. Number one, that fabric was really freaking cool, and it was on sale, and I really liked it, and I was trying to make it as though I were a Jedi. So what would I want to do if I was a Jedi? Because I've always wanted to be a Jedi. So I made it for me. So then it's hard to hear, like, well, your outfit's cute, I guess, but it's not real, or it's not authentic, or, you know.
I don't think we've ever heard that.
Well, maybe you haven't.
Have you heard that? When did you hear that?
From some people.
Oh.
I'm not going to name names or point out any groups or anything, but I've been told.
That's not nice.
No, it's not nice. It's not nice. So.
No, I mean, and that's the thing. You should be an adult about it. And I was like, well, maybe you could make a suggestion of what could make it more period, or more true to thing, instead of just, oh, no one would ever wear anything like that.
Right. Or maybe you could just let people be unique, because it used to be that geeks were like, we were the outcasts and we were shunned for like being weird and stuff. So now all of a sudden everybody wants to be labeled a geek, because now it's like status quo, I guess. It's popular to be a geek. And so people want to be labeled as a geek. And I don't know. This was not the Geek 101 I was going to get into. I was just going to talk about different kinds of geekiness.
So different kinds of geekiness.
Don't get me started.
So
Let's
different
go back.
kinds of geekiness.
History was one.
And of course, you have your regular sci-fi geeks. And there's sci-fi geeks. Those go in like separate genres.
So Sci-Fi Geek has so many different offshoots and branches.
Yeah.
And it's really funny / strange, like the Star Trek versus Star Wars. That's like a huge...
And then you think that's like, oh, okay, well that's it's not just Star Wars and Star Trek. There's several types. There's steampunk, there's diesel punk, there's, you know, book sci-fi versus movie sci-fi.
I don't know. I don't even know how the sci-fi all breaks down. I mean, either you like sci-fi or you don't like sci-fi. It's pretty much... Like, I mean, I realize there are different branches of sci-fi, but I like Star Trek. I also like Star Wars. Like, who doesn't want to be a Vulcan and, like, you know, be able to do the pinch and stuff and be a Jedi and, like, you know, do a force push or something? Like, why wouldn't you want both? Like, I don't know.
And also going with that, we talked about history and history geeks. There's also like historical reenactors that can go through, and they do this like every weekend, and some of them dress up like this every day, just because they like to be in that period. They want to be in that, and That's another thing. You can really geek out about.
And I don't think the history geeks are as elitist. You know who, if you're talking about academia geeks, I think the academia geeks that are the elitists are the science geeks. I think science geeks are huge elitists. They snub their nose.
Reenactors are pretty elitist.
You think so?
Yeah. Some of them are.
Like, I think, you know, Bill Nye has some good information, and he, you know, has taught a lot of generations of kids, but I think he's a snob. I think that he's a science snob, and he goes around, like, you know, putting his nose up at people, and, you know, my science is better than your science. You know, poor Stephen Hawking just passed away, which I was surprised. He just was always kind of a fixture.
Yeah.
And, you know, he's always been, you know, he's always had physical limitations and things, so I just never thought of him getting older and being frail. He just has kind of always been, you know, in the wheelchair and kind of frail, and so I was surprised to see him pass away.
And you've read a book recently.
I am
it's actually a children's book.
Yeah, it's a young adult children's book, so I'm going to do one of my book talks about, it's a book that Stephen Hawking wrote with his wife, and it's really, really cute, and it's for space nerds, so if you really like space, then you will really like this. And that's the thing about science too, though. People don't realize about science. You can be a science geek, but you can like chemistry, or you can like physics, or you can like earth science, or you can like biology.
We have a good question on here. Retro Quinn says, what if the Borg assimilated a Sith Lord? Then it would go up and destroy itself.
You think so?
If the Borg assimilated a Sith Lord, there can be only a master and an apprentice. It couldn't ever be.
But couldn't the whole Borg become the master? Because it's a hive mind. So if they assimilate that mind into the hive mindset...
It's a hive mind. It's only one.
Yeah, but it assimilates that one thing up into the mindset, and then it's like, well, I'm a Sith Lord, and then I'm going to send out all my little hive things. Then it could break the rule set. I think then it breaks through the barrier of the rule set. Because it's really only one mind.
It would destroy itself.
I don't see it destroying itself.
Because as you assimilate more, then all of them are going to want to take over.
They just follow that directive. The directive is to make the apprentices, and then you have all of these Sith Lords making apprentices from the one hive mind, and then the Jedi are done for. There's no more balance. There's no more balance in the Force.
We'll just have to agree to disagree.
Oh, we always disagree. That's like what we do.
What do you think, Stuart? Break the tie.
I'm not breaking the tie. I'm going to just press the little buttons and do the funny stuff.
So it's like, I'm not getting in the middle of this.
Yeah, no, I'm done.
He's like, this is the most ridiculous conversation y'all have ever had. Stop having ridiculous conversations.
Go on, more geek.
So we have that. We have people that geek out about games.
And then again, you have a split.
You have a split.
So there's tabletop games,
games,
and then there's a split within video games. Are you PC gaming? Are you PS4 gaming? Are you Xbox gaming? Are you VR now? Like,
are you video game RPG?
But you know what? A lot of the video game players don't want anything to do with being a geek. They think they are too cool for that label. They don't like that. They don't like that at all. They want to call other people that. To me, from the video gamers that I know, they're more like sports jocks, right? Like, I'm up here, I'm the sports jock of geekiness because I'm a video gamer. Like, I watch Markiplier and PewDiePie, and I make stupid jokes about my video games. I'm so cool.
It's our screw attack.
PewDiePie.
Yeah.
Screw attack is nothing anymore.
Yeah.
They've been bought by Rooster Teeth.
Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. To me,
that's
like,
my geekiness. I knew that.
to me, I always feel like that's the impression I get anyway from video game geeks. Is they feel like they're kind of like the sports jocks of the geek world. Like, I'm really kind of too cool to be a geek. Yeah, I sit in my mom's basement and play video games all day, but I'm cooler than you because I don't wear costumes. That's how they talk. You didn't know that that's how video gamers talk? That's my impression. I should stop doing impressions.
And then the Retro Cruncher, there was a Borg Queen, and she was autonomous. There was a Borg Queen. So yeah, they would all go and kill her.
No, we're not having this. Don't get him started.
They would destroy the
And
Borg
then
Queen.
actually, come to think of it, in the tabletop, there's a split too. Because if you're tabletop, you could be miniatures, or you could be role-playing games, or
Yeah.
you could be Magic and stuff, or you could be board games. So then, and there's a lot of like geeky infighting in the tabletop world.
Yeah.
Like those genres are not friends. They do not like to be friends. They do not want to be friends. We have been
We're
working really
friends
hard
with
to
them.
try. But I think you and I we're not necessarily alone, but we're kind of like this strange, and I think this is why a lot of people don't sometimes accept us and don't like us and have things to say. And people have said things to you before, and maybe you don't remember it, that we're not geek enough because we like to be geek on several different things. Like, yes, I like sci-fi. Yes, we like tabletop gaming. Yes, we like to play video games sometimes. Yes, we like to do cosplay. Yes, we like comics to an extent. We read a few. I'm a very big book geek. I love to read. I read all the time. You and I tend to be science geeks sometimes too. You went to health career, so you're a science geek. I was a science teacher for a while, and I'm getting a degree in science. So we kind of spread our geekiness out to a lot of things, which I think gets us a lot of feedback sometimes that we're not geek enough.
Yeah, you're not a specific geek. You're a general geek.
Yeah, yeah. So then that makes people mad at you, and they don't like that. That really frustrates people.
Guy with the camera 13 says, "Did you guys catch the Sonic the Hedgehog news today? It's about the Sonic Mania thing. The Sega announced that."
The only Sonic news I know is about Ugandan Knuckles, and now I don't know the way.
Yeah, I had to look that up.
You did?
Yeah, I had no idea what that was up until like about a week ago, and
Do you know the way?
I think it was Chris Holmes posted something. I went, damn it, I'm gonna have to look that up. And then I was like, I can't get that 3 minutes back of my life now. I hate that.
No, it's actually been my spring break, so I have tried to be away from my electronic devices as much as possible. And we've like we said, we went out to LBJ and we've cleaned house and we went and visited family, and so I haven't really seen any of the news today. So if you want to give us a heads up, we'll talk about it for a minute.
Yeah, let us know what's going on, if it's anything other than that.
I'll never forget
Who was
Sonic.
because I heard that there was another video game. Was it Sega or was it Atari that was making a new console? Do you know,
Atari
Stuart?
Box is making. There's an Atari. It's
Atari
not,
is, yeah.
It's not really an Atari. Atari doesn't exist. Atari hasn't existed for like 30 odd years.
Yeah.
It's just the name. They're slapping on like a console.
Oh.
But they're making it look retro. It's gonna have wood paneling.
Oh, okay. So
The
my
plastic
friend,
wood
so you know
paneling.
my friend John. So my friend John is the youngest kid of several kids. So his parents were in their 70s when we were teenagers. His mom loved Sonic the Hedgehog. She would play Sonic and she would go "Bring." When she would get the rings, she would make the noise. That's my fondest memory of Sonic. I remember that from Sonic.
He's saying Sonic Mania, the shoes line, and possible remade Sonic Racers. Yeah, Sonic Racers hasn't been around for a long time.
Well, that's why it would be a remake.
Yeah.
I wonder, is it going to be PC or...
No, go ahead.
You think you're funny?
Yeah, just a little bit.
And the cameras go to black, and you hear some punching.
Also, a few Sonic Mania shorts that are going to be released on YouTube during the summer. So, rest in peace, Atari Box. Fulgor says, "Hi, Fulgor. How's it going?"
He's like, "Long live Atari. Long live it in the dumpster." No.
So there are those many things within Gamer Geeks. So we're hearing it.
Now we can hear you.
Did it work?
So,
Yes.
yes. So we have history geeks, and we have science geeks, and we have gaming, different kind of gamer geeks. And then, even though you talked about kind of like historical reenactment and dressing up and stuff, cosplay is another type of geek. Doing that kind of dressing up, and that's not necessarily historical reenactment, but that's reenacting any kind of character from a TV show, from it could be from a video game, from an anime. And
then you have the anime geeks.
Yeah.
And you can even go as far as like subgenres within that.
I was gonna say, and then you have genres within the anime because you have
chibi,
sub versus dubbed
too.
Do you like it subbed or do you like it dubbed?
There's a time you can geek out over music.
I like it subbed. He likes it dubbed. So that's.
Yeah.
You can geek
no,
out.
Sometimes I like it subbed too.
Yeah.
It just upsets you when I like it.
Yeah. And people are Disney geeks. So I think that this is one of the things, though, is in trying to, because in the 80s that word became such a negative connotation, right? And that was a reason for people to come and beat you up, and you were a geek, and they used that in such a negative way. So I think people of our generation tried to flip it around and turn it to be like, I'm just going to own this, right? And I'm going to be a geek. So some people now feel like the word is used too much, right?
To describe everything, which
right.
it
Can
is.
You be a Disney geek?
That.
Can you be a music geek? Can you be a Disney geek? Can you be a unicorn geek? You know, can you be a rainbows and ponies geek? Like, people want to be a geek, you know, about everything. I don't know. I know Stuart kind of had an opinion about that. My opinion is, if it's not hurting anybody for you to call yourself a geek. You know, if you want to be a puppy dog geek or whatever, and you love everything puppy dogs, and you wear puppy dog shirts, and you have puppy dog pillows, and you have little blankets with puppy dogs on them, and every gift bag you give somebody has a puppy dog or something, like you know, you can buy Monopoly with puppy dogs. I mean, you could literally be a puppy dog geek. I think the word geek needs to be about people who are very interested in a specific topic.
Yeah, that they're very passionate. They're passionate about the subject that they're interested in.
Which I wonder then where does that leave people like you and I, who have these multifaceted
and that's
interests?
what Fulgor says. I think you can be a geek about anything you're passionate about.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I actually said that before I read that, Fulgor, so...
So then where does that leave people like you and I that have so many different passions and things that we really like? You know, because sometimes you and I got up early and we were running around trying to see the super blue blood moon. Like, we got up early, we got in our car, we were driving around, you know, we were going to find a break in the clouds and we were going to find it, you know. We didn't find it. It was terrible. We were sad. You know, the eclipse, we do that. You know, we've gone on little entomology expeditions with our son.
One could even say they geek out. Yes, they geek out.
So it's not that we're not passionate about things. We're just not.
We're just passionate about a lot of things.
Yeah.
We really are.
Yeah.
You're not geeky enough. The real geeks are going to beat you non-geeks up.
Yeah. I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to nowadays.
Geeks.
Yeah. You're a fake geek. I am? I was like,
you've introduced that. That's now going to become a thing.
A fake geek?
Yeah.
Well, I remember when that was directed towards me, that it was a fake geek.
Directed towards
I host a show that's about geeky stuff. I make tabletop games that have sold on what is the name? Think Geek. I run a tabletop gaming convention. I was like,
this is how you know Vincent is a true geek. Are you ready? I have the absolute ultimate proof of Vince being a geek. When Vince was in high school, he was a good little boy. He never skipped school or anything. However, he did skip school one time.
Once in freshman year and once in senior year.
Okay, but what was your big expedition? What was your big skipping for?
Well, we called it
Just listen.
the Crusade. And it was to go. We skipped school to see Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
And you were playing a role-playing game.
And we're playing a role-playing game.
On the bus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they did like a crusade around town and did little missions and stuff when they went to go. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't get any geekier than that. I'm sorry. I hate to tell you guys. It's just, you know, he didn't skip school.
We have
and
Stuart chuckling behind the cameras right now.
I have sound effects I can do. So I'm putting it to good use today.
Vincent is a true geek. Through and through, he's a geek. I'm a geek. I have watched the new Star Wars 3 times, and I cry every time.
Yeah, you do. I have a question from Retro Crunch. Are geek and nerd interchangeable?
No.
Well, they kind of are. They kind of are and aren't.
No, they aren't. Not even close.
And
we're going to disagree on this one.
We've had this discussion several times over.
A nerd is an intellectual. A nerd is an intellectual, and unfortunately, a nerd still has a negative connotation.
Before we started owning the word geek, the people that would do that were nerds.
No, there was still a difference. There was still a difference.
It just so happened that those people that were passionate about it were smart.
But there was still, this is going to sound really horrible, but there was still like a get your booty kicked hierarchy, and the nerds were lowest and got beat up the most. They were like teacher's pet. They were like Urkel. Did I do that? That's a nerd, right? They knew everything about everything. You could borrow their homework and get the information. Yeah, some geeks were intelligent, you know, most of us are. But geeks were like, at least when I was growing up and the way we saw it and the way it was presented to us was we were in our own like socially awkward world where we lived on another planet. Our head was in another space. We were consumed by something that was strange or different.
Maybe nerds just geeked out about math.
I don't know. I've always thought
I was labeled as a nerd, but
nerds were definitely higher. It was nerds, geeks, pond scum. I was down about the pond scum level. And then you had all like the norms, and then you had like the
jocks,
the popular kids, and then the jocks and like cheerleader type.
Yeah, they're agreeing with you.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as when I grew up, it's very different. And even now, I still see it as different, which is why sometimes the line, I think, blurs between, am I really a geek for science, or am I a nerd?
But that's just it. The lines are blurred in that respect.
Nowadays, because we've taken over the word geek and we're trying to redefine how we use it, yes. I can see some of that blurring, but I say stop blurring those lines. You're either a nerd or you're a geek. No, I don't care. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I mean, people call me both. Like now that I'm in college and I do well in college, like people are like nerd. Yeah.
So
okay. So I'm a nerd and a geek. Yeah.
So you're contradicting yourself.
No, because I'm a nerd in college because I'm smart and they get jealous because my grades are better than theirs and I do really well.
Be intelligent about your different subjects that you geek out about? Not all nerds are maybe gifted in English when they are in math.
Yeah, but see, I'm more of an English geek.
Geeking out about math, but not necessarily geeking out about English.
But see, I'll geek out about books. I love books. I'm a geek about books, but I'm a nerd in science. Like, I can get high grades. I understand the content. I do well. So there's a difference. I'm not as much of a geek for science. I have a friend who's a geek for science. He is. He lives and breathes science. Like, he's reading articles about science all the time. Every shirt he owns is about science. Like, he is a science geek. Now, is he intelligent and he does well in college in the science classes too? Yes. But some of that comes from him being such a geek that he's read so much stuff that he has the information. So.
And Retro Crunch says, as a teacher, I think Colleen has the pulse on what her peers and students would consider being a nerd and or a geek.
Yeah.
You lost, Vince. Give it up. I'm not giving it up.
You know, it's different though.
It just depends on how you look at it.
But it's different as an educator now. Because people have started to own that world, and because we're seeing more of it in mainstream television and we're seeing it in the movies and stuff, the kids nowadays don't use it in a negative way that we're accustomed to it being used. Like, none of them have seen. Oh man,
Revenge
I just left
of the
my
Nerds.
yes, thank you. Revenge of the Nerds.
They just brought it up.
Like, they
earlier
don't know anything about that stereotype of what we thought a nerd was, right?
Yeah.
They don't know what that stereotype means. Now it's more like, you know, you're the teacher's pet, or you're too brainy, or, you know, they don't have the same negative words for one another that they would before. So.
But I don't know. I think I associated more with nerd during high school than I ever have, like, today.
Yeah.
Like, in high school, I was a nerd. In middle school, I was a nerd.
Mm-hmm.
But as today,
I was always a geek. Because in junior high and high school, I was bad. I did not do my work. I was not smart. I was smart. I just didn't want people to know I was smart because I was already getting picked on for being a geek. Imagine getting picked on for being a geek and a nerd. If people knew that I was both, my life was pretty bad in junior high as it was.
I was a big guy in middle school and high school, so usually people didn't know.
No, I was giant. And that was another thing kids made fun of me for. So, you know, I was giant. I have bulgy eyes and big long legs, so they called me Frog. And then if I did anything that was smart because my dad was an educator, then, you know, he got all the grades for me. And, like, there was always something. And then I liked comics, and I played, once they found out I played D&D and stuff, forget it. My life was over. It was all downhill from there.
But I went to predominantly nerd high school, so I was kind of like in this
Mm-hmm.
bubble that you weren't in.
Yes.
So I actually got to, like, flourish in high school, being a geek and being a nerd because everybody else was.
See, but this comes back to what Black and Silver Diamond said before. We can all change that now by not being a jerk, right? Just don't be a jerk. If people are talking about something and they're interested about it and you really love it, don't crush them and don't be like, well, that's not Marvel. You're stupid. You said it was Marvel and it's not. It's DC.
So don't be a nerd about it.
We're done. That's it.
That was good.
That's it.
Don't critique the geekiness by being a nerd.
That's right. So don't go back to the old-fashioned geek. I think we should
but I
stop
like
biting
nerds.
the heads off of chickens. I don't think that should be a thing anymore. So I think we not revert back to the old-fashioned kind of geek. Let's not Ozzy Osbourne.
Paleo.
Yeah, let's not be.
It's paleo.
Let's not be the old-fashioned geek. Let's be the old-fashioned gonzo.
What was the old-fashioned
I'll have to
gonzo?
look that up.
I'm gonna have to look that one up now. That'll be all my homework for next week. But I think, you know, if you want to be a geek, just be a geek and own it. It's changing. Everything in today's world is evolving, and we're changing what we call things and how it is. And
I mean,
I still have a lot of
back in high school and middle school, there was band geeks.
I still have a lot of anxiety from growing up in that time period where geek was a bad thing, and so I struggle often when we go do things and I'm in cosplay or something, and I'm just afraid of that, like, being attacked and stuff. As I get older, I'm getting better about it.
It's tough to go out there, so when you see somebody in costume, congratulate them. It's tough for me to go out there sometimes.
It's tough, yeah.
Just because people are gonna look at me and think I'm silly, and the people that can push through that and then just do it
it was hard to take that breath and walk out of the car and go to the draft house, because we were at the draft house that nobody was at when Star Wars was, and we were the only ones dressed up. And so, you know, and you can see people kind of staring at you, and you're like,
I remember one time going to work, and this was like maybe 2 years ago on May the 4th, and I was dressed up in my Jedi outfit, and I was contemplating taking that off and not going into work and changing. So, but I mean, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about Geek 101. We're talking about geeks. We talked about the origin of the word geek, which is a person that bites the heads off chickens or does really gross stuff on the sideshow, like
Foolish.
Sideshow Bob. we talked about the different types of geeky things that are out there.
Yeah, we
and
just
geeky
kind of touched on
subgenres.
them.
We kind of touched on them. We really like geeks of all types. We really dabble in just about everything, from history to games to comics to movies. I mean, we're geek out as say we like to geek out.
We do.
So
All over SA.
thanks a lot for checking us out, guys. If you haven't subscribed to us yet, please subscribe to us. If you liked our show today, give us a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, give us a thumbs down. But if you do, tell us why you're giving us a thumbs down, and we'll do better next time. Hopefully you got the audio going good. It seems like we have, and y'all heard us. So, and thanks for interacting. I really appreciate it. But I'm Vince.
I'm Colleen, and that's Stuart.
Geek out, SA.